started. This afternoon I want to provide a brief update on the severe flooding that's occurring in northwest Iowa. You know, after 4 years of drought, the state has experienced unusually heavy rainfall this spring, and beginning on Friday, some areas up in northwest Iowa, so the ground is saturated, which we didn't think we would ever begin to say after 4 years of drought, but beginning on Friday, some areas got up to 15 inches of rain over 2 days, and of course, because the ground was saturated, that has resulted in severe flooding across several counties. The State Emergency Operations Center has monitored the situation overnight, and on Saturday they fully activated the SEOC at 6 a.m. yesterday. I think it's Sunday, my days are starting to blur together. Activated the SEOC at 6 a.m. yesterday, and they are now operating 24/7. With the standing up of SEOC, I immediately issued an initial disaster emergency proclamation for Sioux County. I then directed the Iowa National Guard to stand up a helicopter for rescue missions. Also through an emergency EMAC, I requested an additional helicopter and crew from the Nebraska National Guard so that we could have them on standby. I want to thank Governor Pillen for his immediate response and approval of that request, and just really do appreciate the partnership in that effort. We also deployed Homeland's Urban Search and Rescue Team, or USAR teams, for sift water rescue, and DNR has conducted 250 water rescues yesterday alone. By 10 a.m. yesterday, we'd extended the disaster proclamation to 20 more counties and have since added Palo Alto this morning to the proc as well. We anticipate probably adding additional counties as the water continues to move downstream. Yesterday afternoon, I had the opportunity to take an aerial tour of the region with several of my cabinet members. I can tell you the devastation is severe and it's widespread. In almost every community impacted, the rivers crested several feet above record levels from the floods of 1993. In fact, we had 16 flood gauges that recorded historic levels. While we're still very early in the response, the projected damage is staggering, and at this time it's estimated that at least 1,900 properties are impacted and hundreds have been destroyed, as well as a lot of ag property and ag land has also been impacted by the far-reaching flooding. Businesses are shuttered, main streets have been impacted, hospitals, nursing homes, and other care facilities were evacuated. Cities are without power, and some are without drinkable water. The DNR reported 10 water systems and 21 wastewater systems have been affected by the flooding. That was as of last night. Overnight, more than 1,000 Iowans were sheltered, and all along, Homeland, together with the county emergency managers, many other state and local resources have been evacuating and moving displaced residents to safety. They've been busy putting up barriers and sandbags, putting them in place, a lot of times doing everything they can to mitigate the flooding and to protect their water treatment facility. And just so much more. It's not over yet. As the floodwater begins to recede in the far northern communities, we're already seeing them crest. They're starting to come down, but that water will head downstream, and areas to the south are planning for rivers to continue to crest at record levels. Additionally, the 7-day forecast calls for more rain, which means flooding could continue to be an issue and may even impact other parts of the state as well. Later today, Homeland Security Emergency Management will be conducting a call with our eastern Iowa counties as well as the Missouri River counties so we can get an update and help them be prepared in case we do see additional flooding in those two areas with additional rain. And they're also, as well as that, they're coordinating with the Corps and the National Weather Service. Yesterday, I spoke with FEMA Administrator Criswell. I also spoke with the Region 7 Administrator Spellers. And today, I submitted a request for an expedited presidential major disaster declaration. In that request, it will provide, we're asking for additional federal assistance for 9 counties, as well as 22 counties for public assistance through that disaster declaration. At this point, I want to ask Director Benson of Homeland Security and Emergency Management who will to provide more details about the response on the ground at this time. We participated in a call with all the emergency managers yesterday morning, last night, and then again this morning to get a check-in, see what the immediate needs are. Director Benson will give you a little bit more color and a little bit more detail in that regards. But first, I want to just say how grateful that we are to him and his team, and to the county emergency managers, the local mayors and their teams, and the volunteers. It's just incredible to see everybody kick in, to watch how they communicate, how they back each other up. These are one-man, two-man shops in most of these counties, and they support each other. They come from other areas of the state to support the local EM that's in just dealing with so much. To watch them move and coordinate resources has been beyond impressive. I've seen them drive down in the middle of the night, call and say, I've got it, we'll be done at this time, and sending a pump or a generator or cots. You know, when you've got 1,000 people sheltered, just lining up enough cots to get them to the shelters so that people have some place where they can, you know, stay and then, you know, get a hot meal and be taken care of until they can start to figure out what they're going to do with their home. So just really grateful for his team and my cabinet as well. The State Patrol, the DOT, the DNR, HHS, we've got Red Cross on site, and everyone is on the ground doing everything they can to address this critical response. So it's a team effort, and we're just happy to get everybody involved. And with that, I'll turn it over to John to give you some more details.
My name is John Benson. I'm Governor Reynolds' Director of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. Before I get started, to give you a little color on what we are doing here in the SEAC to support the citizens of the state. As a director, I just want to say my divisions in the department are focused on doing what we can to support the citizens. This, as the governor correctly noted, this is a very serious flood that we're in right now, and it is not going to cease. It is going to blossom across the state. So I will discuss that a little bit further down the road, but for citizens of the state, my people are working for you, and we're going to continue that effort. A little color about what we're doing in terms of the response effort right now. Obviously, as the governor noted, we coordinate a lot with the local emergency managers, and we work on the missions that they decide they need help with. They're looking at their weaknesses, their gaps. We fill those gaps. Right now, one of the big ones we're working on, obviously, is going to be water missions. We've seen a lot of water plants go down. How do we fill those water missions? So we've got a couple of different methods we're doing that, basically all over northwest Iowa. We'll keep working on those. Another big one that's been a big focus for us today has been how do we support those local shelters. As the governor noted, how do we move the resources that we need to get there so those people have a safe place to sleep? Do they have good feeding? Do they have their medical needs met? Last night, the folks from HHS as well as DPS were working on addressing emergency medical issues. Troopers literally running medicine across the state to help support those people that had to leave their house so quick they didn't take the medicine with them. So to Kelly and the commissioner, thank you for your support on that. That's been really awesome to watch. Some of the other stuff we're doing out there, the other agencies are doing, when you're talking about all of these road closures, go on 511 for Iowa. You're going to see a lot of road closures. Those don't just happen. That's coordination between local folks, also with Scott and his team at DOT in terms of how do we make that happen. Little word of advice, if that barrier is up and that road is closed, do not go around it. It is there for your safety. The conditions beyond that barrier are not safe for you to travel in. Word to the wise, don't go around it. Some of the other things we've been looking at with Commissioner Baines and his team, obviously they're doing law enforcement missions, but we did utilize technology from them yesterday to help do an aerial survey of those impacted areas, which aided us in being able to provide the governor with the letter that she just signed to go to the president. So Commissioner, thank you for your support on that. That's been really helpful. As we look at other things, obviously big issues moving forward are going to be flood control. How do we fight this flood back? Where are the weaknesses that we have? So we work with the locals. We talk about transportation of sandbags, HESCO barriers, anything else to fight that flood. Scott and his team at DOT are key to moving that stuff around. We look at the effort that the Guard is doing for us in terms of they did some emergency rescue missions, but they've also been transporting resources around. We have high water vehicles from the Guard in Spencer right now, helping that town that's divided in half. It's been very impressive to watch. As noted, Director Lyons' teams has been doing water rescue missions. They will shift gears here in the next couple days as we talk about debris. How do cities and communities properly dispose of debris and work on those type of missions? How do we help stand up those water systems? Her folks will be providing that technical expertise as we go forward. One thing I would ask your help as the media, as we move forward kind of out of this response phase into recovery phase, one of the things you will see happen is people are going to want to donate. We're in the process of coordinating with the local officials about who do you contact at the local end in terms of to correctly place those donations. You can bring them to me. I'm not the right person. Let's get them down into the local end. So in the coming days, we will be putting out information. I would ask your help in amplifying that in terms of what's the correct place. If I want to donate up into Sioux County, who do I talk to? Who can I donate money to? If I've got goods, I want to donate goods. The one caution I will give you on donations, typically the best option available to you is to donate cash to those recovery funds. Showing up with a truckload of stuff and things makes the situation worse. So be very cognizant of when you want to donate that you're doing that correctly. Also, if you want to volunteer your time, that'd be the same path that we're going to work down so you have the capability to volunteer your time. As the governor mentioned, as we move forward, this flood is not over. Right now, everything you see in northwest Iowa is getting dumped into the Missouri River. If you go look at the river gauges in the Missouri, they are going up and they are going to go up quickly. You will see those gauges peaking beginning the back part of this week. If you're on the Missouri River and on those rivers, please pay attention to the forecasts. Additionally, as the governor noted, we do have rain in the forecast for the next 7 to 10 days. And that rain is going to be primarily focused on the eastern half of the state. Those rivers are rising. This will cause them to rise further. Please pay attention to the forecast. Stay weather aware. If you are in an area that is going to flood, pay particular attention. If you need to get out of your house, please have what we refer to as a go kit. What do you need when you need to leave your house in an expeditious fashion? Think about medicines, think about legal documents, driver's license, even think about contemplating taking your deed to your house with you as well so you can prove ownership, insurance documents. Have a plan, stay prepared. So the other thing, and I hit upon it with the barriers, it's an active flood. This is still a very dangerous situation in the areas that are flooding. Those barriers are not up as a joke. They are there to keep you safe. Listen to what the local officials are telling you with regard to the flood impacts. They are doing that for your safety. Please pay attention. The single entry point, I'll close with the last single entry point into our disaster recovery efforts, is on disasterrecovery, all one word, .iowa.gov. That will be, as we make our way through the recovery process, and if you looked at it in response to the tornadoes, you will see information about if you're an impacted citizen, how you can engage with the various programs that are out there. As we work through the flood recovery process, we will update that site as we go along. But as I said when I opened, our mission here is A, to support the state of Iowa, B, to directly support the citizens and those local emergency managers as we work through this issue, and we will be here as long as we need to be to make sure that mission is satisfied. So thank you.
I think at this point, or at this time, I'll have the National Weather Service come up and just give us an update on what's happening with the weather.
Hi, I'm Donna with the National Weather Service. I'm the meteorologist in charge at the office here in Johnston. As they've mentioned and described quite well, actually, we had over 10 inches of rain that fell last week. One thing that was impressive about it is the scale of how large of an area was affected by heavy rain. It was over 10 inches of rain that fell from north central Nebraska across southeastern South Dakota, southern Minnesota, and into northwest Iowa. To give you a frame of reference, 10 inches of rain is about 8 times what you would normally expect to happen in a week or so, so 8 times average. So a very high rainfall event. That water is now working its way down through the system. So the concern with the forecast is we remain in an active weather pattern, which means periodic rain chances throughout the next week to 10 days. In the short term, so Monday, Tuesday, it looks like those weather systems are going to be moving fairly quickly. That's a good thing because it means the rainfall amounts will be lower. As we look to the end of the week, that's where it gets a little bit more of a concern, Thursday into Friday and potentially even into Saturday, as the system looks like it's going to come and maybe slow down a little bit. So we'll have to, as we get closer, we're going to want to take a look at where that front exactly lines up and where the heavy rain is. The trend in the forecast has been to take the heavy rain for the end of the week. It was yesterday over more eastern Iowa and even into Illinois, and the trend has been to move that a little bit more to the west. So now it's more central Iowa into eastern Iowa. So that's something to watch very closely. And one thing that I would mention as we think about how that water is going to impact the river system, as the Missouri River starts to come up and all this water from the tributaries gets into those main rivers, river forecast, when you're looking at a river forecast, look and see, it should say somewhere on that forecast how much forecast rainfall is included, because many and most, I would say, river forecasts only include forecast rain for the next 24 hours. But we're not expecting that rain to happen until the end of the week, the heavier rain. So just be aware of that if you're making plans based on that. We do look at the long-range forecasts for the Mississippi River, and it does show the Mississippi main stem going into major flooding in the latter part, so in the 7 to 10 day time frame. There's a lot of moving pieces here, a lot of things going on, and we unfortunately just have to wait and see how the rain lays out, and so we can know exactly how it's going to impact the river system.
Thank you, I appreciate that. One of the things, as John was talking about how we've got an active situation and we need to take things seriously, I would just say, which they've done a pretty good job, but if you do get an evacuation order, it's serious. That means that you need to evacuate. We have homeowners that think that they can stand it out and that they'll be fined, and then we're bringing additional resources into the situation for them to get in there and rescue the families. So if you hear, if you get an evacuation order, please do what they've asked you to do. Again, I just want to thank everybody that's been a part of helping address the situation that we're in right now. I can't underscore the importance of what John said about safety during the flooding. It's been, it's been an intense few days. It's been an intense month, month and a half, to be quite honest. People are working around the clock, and information, it just changes by the hour. It's just very, very fluid. So we're going to do everything we can to continue to keep Iowans updated in the days to come. I think it's just really important to stop and recognize the heroic effort that's happening on the ground, the coordination, the collaboration. I talked about it earlier. It's just incredible. We talked to most of the mayors that have been impacted. They are working their tails off with all of the community members, doing everything they can to get the people that they serve back to some type of normal here moving forward. But I think before we open it up for questions, because I have had the directors on the ground, they're working around the clock, I thought it would be nice to give them a few moments just to kind of talk about some of the highlights, some of the things that they've seen, some of the stories they've heard, and what they're dealing with, and then we'll open it up for questions. Can I start over there?
Thank you, Governor Reynolds. My name is Steve Bayens. I'm the Commissioner of the Iowa Department of Public Safety. In terms of our mission, we are in that unique position where all of our troopers are dispatched across the state. So when disasters like this happen, when emergency events arise, we are often in a position to be on the ground the quickest. And so most of our response has been related to that which is physically on the ground. So when we look at kind of our response thus far, I'll start with the Iowa State Patrol Air Wing. We are the only state agency that has fixed-wing aircraft, and so we were able to get up our air wing rather quickly, and really they serve two missions. The first was to document the nature and the extent of the damage, so we can put forth a strong proclamation request from the federal government for assistance, and the second was to really help direct search and rescue efforts. The capabilities of that aircraft are significant. They are able to detect heat signatures in the water, those sorts of things, and then could direct search and rescue on the ground to those individuals that have been swept away by the waters. Our road troopers, again, were those that were first on the scene. They have been facilitating evacuations. They've been establishing those access control points that both Director Benson and the governor talked about. please heed those. We had a couple of individuals yesterday that blew past a trooper, kind of barreled headlong into floodwaters, ended up getting stranded, ended up getting swept away, and really we had one individual that was on the cusp of losing his life. Had the Iowa State Patrol Air Wing not spotted his heat signature in the water and was able to dispatch boats in a timely way to rescue him. Additionally, we've been running medical supplies across the state. This event arose rather quickly, and a lot of folks left their homes without access to medication. So we quickly worked with Director Garcia's team at Health and Human Services and Public Health to determine what those medication needs were. And then we literally leapfrogged those medications from across the state, sometimes taking it all the way from Cedar Rapids up to Northwest Iowa in short order. Our troopers know how to drive and get from A to B rather quickly, so we were able to deliver those in a timely fashion. We've been escorting supplies where they're needed. Obviously, there's so many road closures that when you have a semi full of water, they may not be fully aware of how to get into those needed locales. So our troopers have been escorting those supply convoys into those locales. Additionally, we have established a bit of a taxi service at the Iowa State Patrol. There are a number of individuals that are without transportation and have high priority needs. So our troopers have physically been taking folks to medical appointments, have been getting them where they need to be, see insurance adjusters and the like, and have been spending a good chunk of time doing that. Finally, the road troopers have been taking the calls for service. You know, obviously a lot of these communities have very small police departments, and they can get quickly overwhelmed just from a personnel standpoint. So we've been giving them some much needed rest and taking all the calls for service in those locales. Finally, our communications team, the Clay County Communications Center did lose all power. They were overcome by water. And so we were able to actually stand up a mobile dispatch center in Clay County. We have a large kind of RV that has a full communication suite in it, and we're able to quickly stand that up and then start taking the calls for service for Clay County and doing all their dispatching, and we will continue to do that for the foreseeable future. So that's just a brief update from the Iowa Department of Public Safety.
Next will be Director Marler with the DOT.
Thank you, Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Scott Marler, Director of the Iowa DOT. As the Governor and Director Benson have mentioned, these significant impacts that we've seen, our job is to support these communities and the people who live in them. I'm pleased to say at the DOT we've been very involved with closing and opening roads in support of keeping people safe. That's really the primary focus I'll emphasize here. And I want to echo several comments you've already heard. If you see those barricades that say road closed, please turn around and don't try to go around those barricades and proceed past them. We've been doing a lot of that at the DOT. Obviously, we're focused on ensuring that people have access still to their communities where we can. In that regard, we've been moving a lot of pumps around the state. In fact, we've moved 23 different pumps around the state, both from here at Camp Dodge up to different areas, as well as moving in and around the state up to northwestern Iowa. We've run cot missions from the DOT, where we actually use some of our box trucks to locate cots from right here at Camp Dodge up to Rock Valley, Hayward, and Lamar's. We moved some to our staging area at Storm Lake. We also have been involved with moving HESCO barriers, where in fact we've been active this afternoon moving about 500 feet of HESCO barriers. One of the interesting stories I'd like to share with you is in times like this, as we've heard about impacts to water, there have been donations from some of our great private partners, like the Fairway Corporation, who donated several trailer loads of bottled water. They were able to move 2 trailers actually to our staging area at Storm Lake, and the DOT actually hooked up our tractors to those trailers, and we went ahead and located those right into Rock Valley. So these and many other ways we're doing at the department to try to ensure ultimately that people are safe, that's number one, and that we can provide that support that these communities need. Thank you.
Director Lyon with the DNR.
Thank you, Governor. My name is Kayla Lyon. I'm the Director of the Department of Natural Resources. The Department of Natural Resources plays several roles in disaster response. Our field office staff are on the ground locally working with our water supply folks, our drinking water and wastewater as well as assessing how we get rid of debris and debris management, among other environmental concerns. And they're doing that to help protect the public. In addition to that, you've heard Governor allude to this already, our conservation officers were pulled to these areas with their boats. At one point, we had 22 conservation officers doing water rescues, navigating some pretty nasty current. I've seen some incredible photos and stories from our staff from boats full of families and kids in car seats. For example, we had 2 officers that were dispatched to a medical call. There was a wheelchair-bound individual. His house was flooding, his gas line broke, and he was stranded. And so our officers made it to the house. They got there, they drove the boat up to the deck. They actually disassembled the railing on the deck so they could drive the boat up to it and wheeled him into the boat and took him back to emergency responders. So I want to commend our staff. This isn't unique to the DNR. We have local folks, and we all have local folks that have left their homes and their families that probably are dealing with water in their basement and not having power and rising to the challenge. So I want to make sure that we take the opportunity to thank our staff.
Director Garcia with HHS.
Thank you, Governor. I'm Kelly Garcia. I'm the director of the Iowa Department of Health and Human Services. This is not the first disaster or emergency response we've responded to as a new agency, but it's definitely the largest. And I think what I'm seeing from my team is a really comprehensive response and approach that is absolutely yielding, I think, a better approach for Iowans. And that is exactly what our alignment of agencies is about. We are responsible for health, shelter, and medical needs. As you've heard already, a number of different stories that are very, very real. We are working to provide sheltering needs, so linens, towels, cots, of course, as the governor mentioned, so that individuals can rest and then think about where they go next. We, of course, are responsible for food and water and all of the essential services that are needed at shelters. Feeding beyond a shelter location is top of mind. We've already started to work on our disaster SNAP application. As soon as the governor receives that federal declaration, we will be responding to our federal partners to request disaster SNAP assistance. That will allow Iowans to purchase hot meals and ready-to-go meals in whatever location they're in, and that's a really significant response mechanism. We also have food banks engaged and community action agencies, a number of local partners that have stepped up, as Director Lyon mentioned, left their own homes to be helpers in this situation. We're also responsible for language translation, and that's been a really significant need for parts of the state. We have our own staff, as well as local partners in shelters providing translation in real time. And then we're also working to translate needed materials for Director Benson's website, the One Stop Shop website as well. And then last but not least, because on the human service side of things, that is incredibly important, we reached out to all foster families to make sure that our children in child welfare were safe and accounted for, that foster families or biological families who had their children with them had needed resources and knew where to go as well. One anecdote, but I think a tremendous story that shows the true character and resilience of Iowans was a story that was mentioned a bit earlier by Director Benson. But last night we did have a family who was sheltering in place. They were out of seizure medication and insulin, obviously 2 life-saving, critical medical needs. We were signaled through local emergency management. We worked with Commissioner Bain's team and located a pharmacist who was busy sandbagging on Main Street. Commissioner Bain's trooper was able to meet that pharmacist, and then the trooper drove that those medical items directly to the home in the middle of the night. That family is safe and secure now because of that coordination and because of the spirit of Iowans.
And we just hear story after story after story of that kind of coordination and just resilience and efforts. It's truly inspiring. So for wrap up, we have General Osborne with the Iowa National Guard, who's been instrumental.
Thank you, Governor. Hey, good afternoon. My name is Steve Osborne. I'm the Adjutant General for the Iowa National Guard. And as many of you know, the purpose of the National Guard is to be available to respond to the needs of our civilian leaders, both on the state and federal side. And that's very apparent in this situation where our medical evacuation unit is predominantly deployed to Kosovo. The one crew we do have here remaining in Iowa was activated yesterday, as the governor mentioned, to conduct aerial search and rescue operations throughout the day. Because of that shortage of aircraft and crews, we coordinated with Nebraska. They brought a crew forward staged in the air base at Sioux City for, if needed, for aerial search and rescue last night. We've also had about 25 soldiers on duty since yesterday afternoon, really moving commodities, supplies to support our affected counties and emergency managers and local communities. We stand by for whatever the governor or the Director of Homeland Security Emergency Management may need next. Thank you.
One of the other areas we've actually utilized the Guard is with their high water vehicles. So we've had them in Spencer and as well as in Rock Valley, I believe. So they've been extremely helpful from that perspective as well. So I hope you get some sense that this is an all-team effort. The alignment with the Cabinet has been instrumental again in being able to really streamline our efforts and be efficient in helping get the resources to the communities and the counties that have been impacted. Was that last week? I think we did at our Cabinet meeting, we did a review of Minden and Greenfield and the tornadoes that went across the state, and just things that we can get in front of, things that we can be better at. It was a great Cabinet meeting. We've got some great ideas moving forward, how we're going to change a few of the things that we've done. But one of them was really getting the team on site quicker so that we can really be a hands-on resource to the communities that have been impacted. So it was timely, and we've already kicked some of those ideas and we've already implemented them. So I appreciate it. I appreciate their response as well. And with that, we'll open it up for question, and everybody is available for questions that you might have. That's part of the call that we'll have tonight.
Yep. So that's a very good question, because part of the art of emergency management is the preparation part of the phase. I would prefer we never had to do the response side of it. So those local emergency managers working with those utilities and think the whole gamut of critical infrastructure, recognize where those facilities are, and also understand what they need to do to them to protect them at, in this case, a flood. They're forecasting a particular height. They know what impacts those are going to have, and they can take steps to that. Where it does become a challenge is if you have, like we had up in northwest Iowa, where you have a completely excessive, unforecastable rainfall. That becomes a challenge. But if we get normal stuff, they're on top of it. They're working those issues right now, and we're already having those conversations through the rest of the state about how we can get better prepared for what we're going to see here in the future.
Okay, the emergency managers are continuing to have those conversations. They're in touch with the Corps, as I said earlier. They're working with the National Weather Service, really monitoring how we move those resources that we talked about earlier, the HESCO barriers, the sandbags, the sand, all of that. We had pre-positioned several of those with several of the other floods that we've gone through, and that really has been pretty effective, and actually went into account yesterday and the day before as we were bringing pumps up to northwest Iowa. We had to think about what was potentially going to happen in southeast Iowa and what was potentially going to happen in southwest Iowa, and so it's a moving piece of the puzzle that they're constantly working on, pre-staging, really thinking about what that next effort looks like to be in front of it, but also be prepared to respond relatively quickly. I have not yet, but I've talked to I'm really focused with the FEMA administrator, Criswell, because that's, she's the one I have to deal with first. It goes through her, then she coordinates with the White House to get the approval, so that'll be the next step. I've talked to her already, but I'll circle back with her today just to let her know that we got it filed. I don't know if I mentioned it, but also spoke with our Region Director Spiller yesterday too. So she was also doing an aerial because, again, We wanted to expedite it. We wanted, it rises and then it goes down quickly. And we wanted to get the scope of what the flooding looked like so that we could really, that would impact our ability to get an expedited presidential disaster declaration. So we had the Iowa State Patrol up there doing it, and we had FEMA was also doing some aerial. So that'll really help. Otherwise, they have to go home to home, and it just slows it down. And with the amount of public infrastructure that's been impacted with these floods, I mean, you heard the numbers. It's going to be really important that we get that thing moving, and we know what resources we have access to so we can start the recovery effort. We're going to be back in Greenfield and Minden and Shelby County again on Wednesday. We've got a lot of homes that we have to figure out a solution for that have been destroyed. And so we've been working closely with contractors, working with Debbie and IFA and just all of the various agencies, really trying to figure out what those next steps look like to put a plan together. And we're going to have the same thing up in Northwest Iowa. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of housing that we're going to have to figure out how to stand up relatively quickly. Just as a side note too, we received a text from President Linsmeyer, Brian with Buena Vista. He called and said, hey, we've got housing available over the summer, especially for any of the impacted families. And then we had Dort and we had Northwestern follow up with the same offer. So we were just trying to think of all the different options and was really appreciated them reaching out and offering their facilities, especially over the summer for short term anyway, to house some of the families that have been impacted. So really appreciate their efforts in reaching out and making those available. Actually, I was talking to the mayor in Rock Valley today, and that's something we're coordinating with the Guard right now with General Osborne. They might need that going forward. As John had indicated, we've had several, or maybe it was Scott, several of our businesses, Walmart, Hy-Vee, Fairway, that have trucked in water, but we'll have to probably have something more long-term there. They're also, in case of a fire, they need some water to be able to kind of mirror the fire truck so that they, of course, have access to that. So that's something they're working on right now. Just some unique situations, too. Spencer, it's literally the town is cut in half. So they have the north side and the south side. They have two shelters stood up. They couldn't even coordinate. The EM was on the emergency manager was on the south side, really unable to get to the north. And again, other emergency managers stepped up to help facilitate that. And I believe Cherokee right down the middle as well. So dealing with just some interesting situations like that as well, that just compounds some of the challenges that they're facing as they're trying to help people that have been impacted by the floods. So. No, here's what happens in Iowa. We've got shelters stood up. I think the number was 1,000. That's just one night. I mean, that's just in 24 hours, 1,000. So they were able to be taken care of. But so many have family and friends that they've reached out to that's where they tend to go first. But we have to think about that. We have to think about long term. We have to think about porta potties. We have to think about showers. We have to think about hand washing stations. I mean, all of those things we're talking about with Rock Valley, for instance. This morning the mayor called with kind of a list of things that they're looking at. Most of those go through the local emergency manager, and it goes through the chain as it should. But I've reached out to them and said, if you need anything, let us know. And so they're just making sure that we're hearing some of the things that that they need and that they will probably require as they move forward. So the thing with the flood, it goes up fast and it goes down fast, and then it's just the cleanup. So it's just what happens down river. Is there anything, John, that I'm missing that you want to add?
No, I think the challenge will be, as the governor has noted, with this flood, it's relatively, I'm not going to use the word flash flood, but it's relatively an up and down flood. This will be terribly dissimilar from the Missouri flood, where the water sat on those counties for 3 months. So what it does is it hopefully will shorten our sheltering operations, but the issue becomes, and this will be a long-term issue for all of these cities to deal with, is the impact they've had to their housing and their businesses. Those are not short fixes. Those are long-term things. We have to be very cognizant about how we're thinking about it. We have to be very thoughtful in the process. Local officials have to be thoughtful about that. I do not know the answer to those questions now because we're only 2 days in, but that will be a month-long process that we'll be working through. So I'll take your questions backwards. Are their needs completely met? No. And that's why the governor remains engaged, and my team and all of the cabinet you see here. We all remain engaged with those communities because we recognize, irrespective of the disaster, if it's a tornado or a flood, it is a long haul to get back on your feet. And so that becomes a long process. We're talking months, years. With regard to ensuring the scams, that's why we want those locals to tell us who it is. And we will only put the ones that are correctly vetted through the local emergency management community onto our website. You will probably see scams out there that's saying, oh, all of our money is going to go to. Trust our website, disasterrecovery.iowa.gov. Give us a day or two to get those up there, but that will be your best source in terms of how to make those donations.
I appreciate that question because Greenfield actually experienced that. So it is really important that we make sure that it's a secure individual that's asking for that. So that's really important. And I appreciate John bringing up the businesses. I tend to focus on the families, but there have been a lot of main streets that have been impacted and businesses that have been impacted. So it is far-reaching. Did somebody? Well, it was 22 counties. Yep. 22 counties. Is that on
22 for
that's mine.
Assistance, and then I believe we have 9 on the individual assistance,
yeah.
Which is your homeowners.
Yeah. So I don't have a community count because we go by the county usually when we put it in. That makes it available. Yeah, 22 counties for public assistance, 9 counties for individual through the presidential. I don't. I mean, you had to put something in to meet the requirement, and I assume we have, but I assume it's low.
It's not accurate, let's just say it that way.
Yeah.
Please understand that we are only 2 days since this flood has really broke, so the concept of dollar-related damages is truthfully unattainable at this point. We're looking to determine what are the major impacts in terms of destroyed homes, major homes. And I can't even tell you the damages, for example, to the secondary road systems in the state. Those are going to be extensive. I have no clue what that dollar figure looks like right now.
Yeah, that was the other thing I was going to mention. So thanks. I mean, just to the county roads and to the state roads. I mean, it's extensive. Shoulders gone, underwash. There are a lot of roads closed up in that area. It is very difficult to get in and out of some of these communities. The water's going down, but they've been breached or impacted, and so we have to be really careful as people continue to try to gain access to these communities. Yeah, so we haven't. It's relatively quick. I reached out to Pillen in Nebraska, and then the request, of course, went through the formal channels and just said, hey, this is coming over. And he immediately got back to chief, got back that they'd stand it up. Then Jim sent me a text and just said, happy to help. Let us know if you need anything else. We've gone back and forth with Wisconsin. Who sent the, Wisconsin sent an individual down to help with some of the tornado damage. So it's relatively, you can do that fairly quickly through an existing EMAC. Through the EMAC system. Boy, look at this. I'm getting, I don't need a few more of these disasters to get even better at what we're doing. But all of us, the governors are really grateful for that kind of partnership and coordination, and that's the whole purpose of EMAC, so that we can really offer resources, partner, coordinate, back and forth. I saw a lot of that during the flooding, the 2019 floods along the Missouri, Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, and Iowa. We worked as a team and actually collaborated in working with the Corps to get some of these levees fixed and to change the way that they were doing them. And it was really effective to have 4 governors at the table with the Corps to really help move them along and expedite some of the processes. Yeah, well, so John's doing a call this afternoon with both areas, so it'll be all the emergency managers. I'll just let you, I don't need to talk about what you're doing.
Thank you. No, the concept is have the conversation before it gets bad. So right now we're on the Missouri River and on the eastern side of the state, we're having those preparatory conversations to understand, okay, if you are a county emergency manager and the forecast says you're going to have this flood level, are you going to have weaknesses? Are you going to have gaps that we can help you address? So we're having those conversations now with them, so if the forecasts do hold and we identify weaknesses that they may run into, we're going to help them out, obviously. But the other thing that goes along with it nice is it gets all of those local coordinators on the call at the same time, and one of the things you will see is it's a whole bunch of type A personalities first, but they start conversing with each other, and their natural instinct is to help each other. So if it's like, I'm going to run into a water problem. Well, hey, I've got a buffalo out in my yard. Can I move it up to you guys and help you? That's perfect. They've already solved the issue. I don't have to engage in it. But that's what those preparatory conversations are for.
That's a good question. We've had a lot of wastewater bypasses, particularly up in the northwest part of the state, and so that's always the guidance that we provide when we know these communities are bypassing. So we'll probably continue to expand the scope on that. But if there's flood water, you're best to stay out of it. It's probably got some things in it that you don't want exposed to. So that's been our recommendation.
So Disaster SNAP runs on its own authority. You have to have the presidential declaration first, and then we, as the SNAP agency, apply. Individuals are qualified based off of their household income, but you deduct the loss associated with the disaster. And so many of the people in this room, depending on the variety, might not be a typical SNAP client, but would qualify in this space because of the loss that they've incurred. And it does. It comes with additional flexibilities specific for a disaster recovery phase in that immediate time frame. So it's going to be really important for us. That's why we're already working on the application to move as quickly as possible. The mapping that DPS has been able to provide will help us do that. SNAP typically only has a limited kind of allotment, and you can't buy prepared meals. So you can't buy a rotisserie chicken or something that's been prepared and is ready to go and consume, but under Disaster SNAP, you can. And so that's really important for families that are hoteling or in a shelter or otherwise dislocated from their typical arrangement.
Well, you know, I saw a lot of ag land underwater yesterday, more than I thought that I would really going up. So, and you know, they can't replant, so this will have an impact. It'll go towards the totals. That actually runs through USDA and FSA, so they have a different way of reporting that. So we just need to make sure. We ran into a little bit of a snag with that, I would say, in Shelby County, actually with the tornadoes. And so we're trying to get in front of that. I've actually asked John, Director Benson's team, as they're collecting data, to collect any farm-related data as well. A lot of it was reminiscence of driving over the Missouri, where all you could see was the top of a bin. The whole farmstead was underwater. So, you know, we're going to try to collect that, and hopefully we can expedite that coordination a little bit better than we did last time. But this will have more crop impact than the other one did because of the water and not being able to replant. So those numbers will be, unfortunately, higher. And it looks like more bins and just farmsteads also taken care of. There's a large number, large livestock industry up there as well. I think for the most part, we didn't see a lot of loss there, but we're still collecting that data. Well, listen, I want to just say thank you for being here. As you've heard, it's ongoing. I am so grateful for the team, the emergency managers, John's team, and just Iowans out there who are working around the clock to take care of not only their family but each other. And we see it every day, every day, every day. And so just ask Iowans to continue to be safe, to watch the weather, and make sure that we're making informed decisions as we continue to work through not only the existing flooding but prepare for what's potentially coming at the end of the week. So we're going to continue to stay in contact with all of those that have been impacted. They're going to see a lot of my team and of me. And, this isn't going to end in a month. This is going to take several months to really get people back to normal and back in homes. But we're ready to go. We pulled the team together. We're thinking creatively, innovatively, and outside of the box so that we can meet the needs of Iowans. So thank you for being here today and being a part of this. Thank you.